Yeah, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to really see you, meet you, even it is only by video. Thank you very much for your very kind information and to be able to share with you some thoughts. And Mr. Solomon, really thank you very much for the invitation. So maybe you want to say first a few words, Mr. Solomon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamid Peseschkian. For all of you, I want to say a little bit, I would like to thank you, Dr. Hamid Peseschkian, the president of the World Association for Positive and Transcultural Psychotherapy and director of the West Baden Academy for Positive Psychotherapy. Really, thank you so much for supporting the government of Ethiopia and St. Paul Hospital, Millennium College. So on this occasion, I would like to thank also St. Paul Hospital for collaboration in the future. Also, we are working to work together and to start a positive psychotherapy course in the college. So now, in short, I would like to say this one, but in connection with COVID-19. So Dr. Hamid Peseschkian is ready to give us theoretical and practical experience, especially the European experience. If the worst things happen in Ethiopia, what can we do? And I think we benefit a lot. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Hamid. Please start.
Thank you very much. And really thank you for taking your time. So the idea was, if you agree, that about 45 minutes, there will be a short introduction, then we can discuss maybe together.
Okay.
Okay. But if you allow just 1 or 2 words, what I'm doing usually, I'm engaged in the training of psychotherapists, and the German model is quite complicated. So this is the training we do. It takes a 5-year postgraduate training. Do you hear me, or it's okay?
Is there echo?
Yes, there's echo, but it's okay or not?
Hello, maybe can you write on the chat if there is?
From the presenter side, yeah.
Maybe let me talk with them. Let me, okay.
Let me start and we'll see.
Hello, Isamachuhal, can you hear?
Isama.
Isamalal, echo yella marala?
Yella, yantala yella.
Malay yallo, you Dr. Hamir lan yallo?
Oh.
Solomon, I just
now you can continue. You can continue. They can hear you, but there is an echo, a little bit echo from you.
Okay,
Hamid.
let's see.
Okay.
And in Germany, in Wiesbaden, this is near Frankfurt, we have a large academy. This is a state licensed private academy for higher education. So we have about 550 postgraduate students who are psychologists, educational scientists, and medical doctors, and to come and to get the certificate as a psychotherapist after they have either the medical or the psychological license. We have a large outpatient clinic with 160 part-time residents, so it's a very large one. It's about 60 treatment rooms and so on. So it's a quite large outpatient clinic, and we are treating children, adolescents, and adults then. And I will maybe later say a few words to that. And in addition to that, we are also engaged with the World Association in about 24, 25 countries, including Ethiopia. We are very happy about that. So some of the experience I will share will be also from some other countries, actually. So it's very interesting how people in different places tried to deal with the same challenge. Today, with your permission, I wanted to concentrate on these few aspects. First, to say something what we call like the same pandemic but different situations, something about the main mental disturbances, then a short introduction to positive psychotherapy, and then how we are able, so to say, to survive the emotional pandemic, and then also some practical things then. Okay? Good. Well, one of the interesting things, I think, and therefore this pandemic is so important, that it affects so many people. And this slide shows this very nice, this from UNESCO, that 9 out of 10 students worldwide are affected by that. So in 191 countries, schools or so have been closed for 1 billion students. So I think this is something which shows that that I think we did not have something which affects all the world at the same time. I think this makes this a very special situation, and we later get to that, especially the effect on the children this has. One thing which we have found out here, it's very important to differentiate a little bit, and this small proverb explains that. It says, we are all in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. I think that's very important, because this pandemic is the same virus. It's a global disease, but everybody, every country, every family, each nation is affected in another way. And I think that's very important, especially when we do our psychological or psychiatric assessment, to be aware of that. As you see here, this is a general thing, how is problem solving in different cultures. So you see, there's a problem, it would be the virus, and then you try to solve it, and then how would people deal with that? So it's not only different cultures, but also each mentality, each family has another way to cope with the problem. And I think that's very important to find this out, because we have here some people, for them, the last two months they call it in Germany Corona holidays, yeah? So they are maybe well off, so they have more time for everything, and some other people are dying, yeah? So it's at the same time, it's very different circumstances, and we have to bear this in mind. And there's also a transcultural aspect of the physical distancing. For example, in Germany, they say 1.5 meters are 18 bottles of wine. In America, they say it's 1 refrigerator length away. In Siberia, Russia, they say it's a small bear of 1.5 meters. A small bear, not a grizzly bear, but a small brown bear. This is the distance. Yeah? So everybody has another way to understand how he has to apply that. This is more like to explain that even the virus is the same, but it has a personal impact on each one of us. And I think that's very important to, especially for us who are working in the field of mental health, to find this out. So one question, of course, is first, what is the objective risk of getting COVID-19 in my area? For example, let's say, if you live in New York, it's different than if you would live in a village out somewhere then, yeah? Or like in your country, the number of deaf people is fortunately not so high, but one is very afraid in the large cities. So that's very important. How is the objective risk there? Then how are the life circumstances? Housing, do I live alone? Do I live with 10 people in 2 rooms? Is my profession affected by that? Am I a health worker who has to go and to work during the pandemic, or I am retired and sitting at home and nothing has changed? Do I have internet access? Very important issue. The next is, of course, the culture. It's very interesting that, you know, for an individualistic culture, I think to deal with especially with the quarantine and so, is different than in a collectivistic culture. And maybe we can discuss this later. For example, in Germany, for some people, it's not so difficult. It's not so much affecting that they should not be together with many other people, because usually they maybe have not so many contacts. But for some foreigners in Germany, it's very difficult. They're always with family and friends and every evening, and so they're suffering a lot from this quarantine. My family situation, my financial circumstances. Did I lose my job, or someone who supports me financially cannot do that? The government regulations are very important. What are the laws in the countries? And of course, how is the leadership in my country also affects a lot, of course, then, yeah? The medical conditions in my city or region, if I would be ill, will there be treatment? Then is there a quarantine or not? Is a lockdown, or is just some restrictions? And of course, the personality traits, as we know, it's very important. I have a small picture for you. You see that for the extrovert person, it's much more difficult than for the introvert. You know, the introvert person, if he has some quarantine, he continues with the work he was doing, and he does not need so much social contacts. But for an extrovert person, it's very, very difficult in this quarantine. And we see this among colleagues and friends and neighbors. And of course, what previous experiences did I have, traumas or so, or any existing disorders? I think this is clear. But what I want to emphasize is that you must be very careful not to generalize that, even if it's a global pandemic, but to see always how is the, as we do always in medicine and psychology, how is the individual situation at that moment? I think this is something very important. I don't know how, if that's a subject in your place, but here in Europe, this is a very important thing. And I think we have to beware of three things. One is sometimes here we have like a competition a little bit. Who is suffering more? Whose situation is worse? Or who has an essential job or a profession? You see that, are you affected by that? Or, oh, I don't have time, I'm so busy with this thing. Or, you know, oh, I'm in a risk group. So in Germany now, it's very famous to be in a risk group. If you're a risk group, it's like the passport you have. Oh, I'm in a risk group, and so I cannot do this, I cannot do that. So I think you must be careful. That's not such a competition. The second, of course, is the social division. Rich people, for them, it's different to deal with than with poor people. We have here, I don't know how it's in your place, you know, like in America, so this prejudices against minorities or other nationalities. It's the Chinese virus, closed the borders. On Germany now, they are sometimes discussing, well, the elderly would die anyhow, because usually elderly people die from this. Yeah? So should make this whole thing, or they just die and that's okay? And the judging, as we know, always in psychotherapy and mental health, suffering and stress is always subjective, and we should be careful not to judge others. See, some people have here really, we call it Corona vacation, and some people say it's the worst time in my life. It's a family crisis, and I have to see how can I survive every single day. So this was just at the beginning, which I think is important to bear this in mind when we speak, that, of course, if we live in Addis Ababa is different than if we live in a village, or if we live in New York or somewhere else, it's also a big difference. And then I found this, that, you know, of course, you know this better than me, the actual situation in your country, but I found this very impressive what your president said, yeah, that really that the virus is really attacking the world, and the world needs to unite against that. I think that's something which is very, very important, that that even in some places individualism and nationalism are increasing, but the main thing is how can we show solidarity, and I will later get to that. I think it's a great chance to really promote mental health in all our places then, and we have to demand more from our governments. I will get later back to that. I think that's important, not to see only the illness, but the dimension of that. As you know now, this pandemic will go through different stages. Now in May 2020, we are just experiencing the first wave, which is like the beginning of the shutdown. And then we will focus today on that is this emotional pandemic, which has started already and which might last for years. And then of course comes the question about the economic crisis, and especially the political and societal crisis. What will this mean in future? Yeah, money-wise, economic-wise, what will it do with the cultures and so on then? But today we want to focus especially on the emotional aspect. If you allow just a few words to this expression of the emotional pandemic, you know, in a very materialistic world, everyone is focused on the physical and economic aspects of the pandemic, such as physical distancing, washing their hands, wearing masks, the testing, do we have hospitals, when is the vaccination coming? But for us now in mental health, we know that this kind of health emergencies bring some emotional reactions, unhealthy behaviors, and non-compliance with public health directives. We have this now in many Western countries. People go out for demonstration and this and that. So once the virus has gone, and already now, the emotional pandemic will come and might last much, much longer. So even if there's a vaccination and this and that, we will have to deal with the traumatic long-term effects on individuals, families, and societies. There's an increased risk for psychiatric illness, or as we say here in Europe, in a few months we will know, are there more divorces or more births? You see, so do we need more lawyers or more midwives? So what will be the emotional consequence of that? We don't know yet. Nobody knows. I think that's something to bear in mind, because in the discussion outside, it's usually the, if you want, only the virus, so the materialistic aspect is discussed. And I think it's our task to bring in really that there is a huge emotional aspect into that, which might be much more severe than the other. Let me now say a few words. You know that, but just to summarize up some of the main mental and psychological problems during this crisis. You know that, but just very brief. We know that one of the major things, of course, is the anxiety, which shows itself in different forms. People will have a lot of fear for oneself or for others. You know, I can be affected by an illness, what will happen? Depression, anger, aggressiveness, aggression. The problem is because you can't get the virus, so but you are angry. You are angry against the virus, but you can't catch the virus, so you're aggressive against someone else. Now in our place, it starts, for example, if someone does not wear a mask or people are meeting crowds, then some people they play like police person, you know, they control them and so on. So you have this fantasies, the aggression, and you want to get it out. The despair, especially because you don't know how long it will last. Then here we have something, the desire to control others, because life is out of your control. So you want to control others and give them order what they have to do. Impatience, some people who sit at home, boredom. Then a great major thing which will increase the suicidal ideas and the suicides. Now in our state here in Germany, this state of Hessen, just the financial minister killed himself a few weeks ago then, and his assistant too, because they were so overburdened how they are going to deal with that. In some cultures and homes, there's this loneliness, because maybe you can only meet your immediate family, not to go out, the desire of emotional nearness. Some people see also lack of motivation. They are at home and they don't do anything, feeling of isolation, eating patterns change. We get later back to that, the lack of self-confidence, which is a very important issue, loss of control. And I don't know how it's in your place, but in Europe, a major question is this question about the increase of domestic violence. That's something I think we must be very careful, combined with that child abuse, alcohol abuse, and the worsening of existing medical conditions. But there are also other effects of the pandemic, which I think for us as mental health workers are very important. The lack of personal hygiene. We have here some people who have not left their home for weeks, so you don't pay any attention to your clothes and this, no physical activity. People develop unclear physical symptoms, insomnia, some gain weight, some have hunger because they have no money anymore, lose weight. A lot of stress at home. I don't know how it's in your place, but here a major stress aspect, I later get to that, is this remote or homeschooling, yeah? So that you sit at home and you have to, and the children cannot go to school, and for the last weeks, parents have taken care of that. They call it quarantine parenting. So that's a major thing now in Germany if people have small children. Marital and family problems increase. Many people sit too much at the computer. Some have financial losses. Or for example, like in your country, it's a big problem that those who are in other countries and sending money back, some have lost their jobs. Relationships change. In some people, the faith in God increases. In some others, it decreases now. It's both of them. Yeah, you know, you're angry about God, or do you think God will take care of everything and forget the government? If God wants, we will be healthy. The wearing of masks can cause fear. You know, I personally don't like it. If everybody walks like that, I found it very difficult. And as we say now in Germany, I don't know how it's in your country, in Germany, we have now more experts than patients. because everybody is an expert. Everybody listens to the news and everybody knows everything about this virus, and they become really stressed out then. Yeah, so we also get to that. One must be very careful. You know, which news do you listen, which information, and then stop the information. We have some people who, you know, every 2 seconds they're on this mobile phone and getting the latest thing. And we have, as we say, we have 80 million experts in Germany now for virus. That yeah, people get too much and wrong news. There's something which we are now also discussing now in Europe a lot and in North America is the difference between physical distancing from social distancing. You know, when the first publications came out, they always call it social distancing, but at the end, it's just a physical distancing. Yeah, so many people are suffering because you are not. They think you are not allowed to relate to other people. Then, of course, will be the question: is it the quarantine or only restrictions? How long is the lockdown? The traveling restrictions, and I think the uncertainty. So to summarize up. Each of us will emerge in our own way from this storm, but for everyone it means something else. And I think this makes it not so easy to understand someone. So we have really to assess how is the situation of that person. This is just from an article which was just published a few weeks ago in the New England Journal of Medicine. They say that in the psychosocial assessment, when we go to the virus, we have really first to ask about COVID-19 related stressors. Then we have to see, are there some secondary adversities, the psychosocial effects we have to ask, and are there any indicators of vulnerability? We see this here that especially, of course, like resilient families, strong families, they can deal quite well with that. And some even see it as a unique chance for the family. And weak families, they are suffering from this enormously then. Yeah, we have some children in our center who have not left the home for 7 weeks, no contact to anyone, and only sitting at this mobile phone for the last 7 weeks. Yeah, some have even forgotten the German language. You just had a foreign patient. The girl is 14, was only sitting at home. She can't speak German anymore for 7 weeks, only with the parents. So it's really a big issue. Now, with your permission, I want to very briefly introduce those elements of positive psychotherapy which we use in our work, and which I think is also you can apply very nicely to different cultures. And Mr. Solomon has a lot of experience and later can share maybe something about this, but really very brief thing then for this presentation. As you know, we have something what we call like a positive mental health movement, you could say, and there are many experts in that, but maybe the 3 maybe most famous its directors of positive psychotherapy, which was founded by my father in the 1970s. Then we have positive psychology by Martin Seligman in 1998, and then positive psychiatry by Professor Dilip Jesti in 2012. He lives in California. So these are 3 different approaches, but nevertheless they focus on the ability of human being, on their potential, and so on then. And I want to focus a little bit on, of course, on positive psychotherapy. Very short, we can say that this positive psychotherapy was stimulated by the spirit of time which existed in the 70s in Germany by humanistic psychology, by methods from Viktor Frankl, Moreno, Meng. It was inspired by the humanistic teachings and virtues of the Baha'i faith. And the idea was to look for an integrative method, so not to have this fight between the different modalities. And it was based on cross-cultural observations. And then today we can call it a humanistic psychodynamic method. It's short-term, conflict-centered, and it's applied. It was introduced in 80 different countries. 80 different countries, and we have now training centers in 24 countries. Also, fortunately, in Ethiopia, it's not the only country in Africa at this moment, so that's very encouraging. And we have also this Ethiopian Association of Positive Psychotherapy, where Mr. Solomon is now the president since last year. So what I want to say, it's not a Western method, it's not an Eastern method, it's an integrative method, which you can apply if you work in a city, in a village, if you speak with a professor or with a simple person. The word positive in this connection comes from the Latin word positum or positivus. It means the actual, the real, the concrete. So we say actual and real are not only the problems of the client or the patient, but also his ability to become healthy again, to deal with this situation. To give you an example, usually in traditional medicine or so psychotherapy, we have between the doctor's therapist and the patient is his illness. In positive psychotherapy, we say also the capacities of the patient, his potential, or we call nowadays we say resilience, resources. This is also between them. So we don't look only on the negative things, but on the capabilities the patient brings with himself. This is to do with a positive conception of human nature in positive psychotherapy, which you can call resource-oriented, salutogenetic, positive humanistic, so that we often say a human being is like a mine full of gems, like diamonds, brilliance, and so this is the potential of someone, and we have to help them to bring this out. But this changes the whole attitude towards the patient. So it's not only someone who is ill, but someone with a lot of capacities. What does it mean? When we get now more concrete how to manage now the quarantine, also on this pandemic, one of the first things indeed is, it sounds very easy, but it's difficult, learn to change our perspective. See, sometimes we have to look at something from another point of view. And you know that not the situation, but my own perspective is very important. We know that how do I look at this whole situation, my whole life, the outer experiences. And you know, like these two gentlemen, they're both in the same prison, but you see they draw different pictures. So we apply this method a lot in stress management. And now it's nothing else than a very stressful situation. The question is, do I feel more self-determined or more remote controlled? Whenever in life I feel remote controlled, I'm in stress. So someone wants me to do something, then I'm stressed. So for example, now I have the feeling the government decides for me what to do. I'm out of control of my own life. And now is the question, how can we help our clients and patients to have the feeling I'm self-determined? Of course, there are some frames now with the pandemic, but nevertheless, it depends on my own perspective. And as someone has said very nice, not everything has been cancelled. Yeah, sun is not cancelled, spring not, relationships are not cancelled, love is not cancelled, reading, devotion, music, imagination, kindness, hope. Because some people, I don't know how it's in your place, in our place, they have to become so fatalistic and they pull out and they say, you know, that I have just to wait for the vaccination to come, yeah? But not everything is cancelled. And I think this hope is one of the main tasks we have to give to our patients, because they are sometimes very confused by the news they get and so on. They're so afraid. So we say it changes something in our life, but still we can be in control and not everything has been cancelled. That's the only slide which is now in German. It says it depends on your vision. There are three gentlemen who are working on a stone. So the work is identical, but if you look at their faces, he is depressed, he has a mild depression, and he is fully motivated. So it cannot be their job, because the job is the same. They have different visions what to do. The first gentleman thinks, I'm working on a stone. The second is, I'm building like a large window. And the third one is saying, I'm building a cathedral. So I think that's also a question, what vision do I have before the quarantine, during the pandemic? What am I doing? For example, I don't know how it's in Ethiopia, but here in Western countries, a major challenge is that the children are now at home. And usually the parents are not so much used to that because they go to daycare, full-time schools. So the first would be, I have to change the diapers every day. You know, the child is just eating and doing and this and that. And the other might have a vision, I'm educating the next generation. I'm educating a world citizen. So I think that's something we have to help the people to change their perspective to get more a vision for their life. What am I doing now? And what can I do now during the pandemic? Something which maybe it's clear to you, but I emphasize to nearly every patient is there will be a life after the pandemic. Some of them do like this is the day of judgment, there's no other, nothing will ever come. So I think that's very important, this hope and vision to give them, there will be a life after that, and how can you prepare for that? The major thing I now want to share with you is how we apply this balance, a very special model, and especially in the current time. In positive psychotherapy, we say there are 4 major areas in life in which you can spend your energy, your time, and your life if you want. One is for your body and your health. One is from your work. One is from your relationships, and one is from thoughts about meaning of life, goals, purpose, future, and so on. Each one of us has these 4 aspects in himself, but depending on our culture, our family, our time we are living in, some areas are more developed than others. So if you look at this model and you would think, how much energy do you spend every time, or your client, your patient, every day for his body and health? How much for his work? How much for relationships and family? How much for the future? For example, in Germany, many people look like that. So 80% of the energy goes to work usually. And then only the rest is a little bit for body, family, and things is different. So we have made like a small research, and we found out that in Western countries, especially body and achievement are very important. In Middle Eastern countries is contacts, and the 4th, the spiritual dimension. In countries like sometimes between East and West, Russia, China, for example, it's achievement and the family and the contacts. I don't know how it's in Ethiopia, but I guess it depends also. If you live in Addis Ababa or if you live in a village, and what is your profession. But that's something we can apply very nicely to our patients. What does it mean? It means that if you want to be healthy over the long run, you must be in a balance. So you have to put 25% of your energy, not of your time, of your energy for your health, body and everything, nutrition, sexuality, outer appearance, and cosmetics, aesthetics, and so on, sleep and so on. 25% for work and achievement, 25% for relationship, family, friends, and so on. And 25% of the question, why am I doing all that? What's the purpose here of this? What's the purpose of my life? And so on and so on. If we don't do that, sooner or later, problems will come up. Either I get physical problems. The second field, I get stressed. The third one is often anxiety, depression. And the 4th one, we know this, fear of dying, fear of living, and so on. And also substance abuse goes to the 4th area. So one very practical thing is to discuss with the client and the patient, how can they find a balance, even they are now in quarantine, lockdown, and so on there. We have applied these models in different, this model in different countries, even with prisoners, we have discussed that. In the prison, you would say, well, what can I do from these 4 areas? But you can develop all these 4 areas too. Even in the elderly home, so wherever I have to take care of my body, of my health, I have to achieve something. Maybe I can't go to a job, but still I can read, I can do something. My relationships are important. And what is the future? What are my goals in life, and so on. So during the quarantine, something which we have found very useful is to ask the patient, from which spheres of life do you get your self-esteem during the quarantine? Okay, for some people who like to do a lot of sports, now they say, I can't do this anymore, for example, or I'm not feeling well. My work, for example, I'm working from home, or I've lost my job even now at that moment. Relationships, well, I'm only with my family, small family at home, I can't visit the grandparents, no family, no big party, and so on then. And the 4th one is, well, my future, my goals, everything has changed, I can't go to the church anymore, and this and that. So the question, so we have a lot of clients, I don't know how it's in Ethiopia, but in Germany, who have 4 minus on each area. So not one of these areas is now developed. No body, no work, no relationship, no future. And then we are wondering why the people are stressed out or even kill themselves then, yeah, or drink alcohol and so on then. So I think this is one of the major things we have to help our clients, and that's a simple system everybody understands, but it goes very deep. How to help them to develop these 4 aspects even now when they are in a special life circumstances. You can take care of your body even if you're at home. You can achieve something. Yeah, you learn the language, you do this, to do some order at home. How can I increase relationships and to find goals and future in my life? I hope this is a little bit understandable, but that's something we found very, very useful. Maybe later in the question we can get back to that, but this you would say is something very practical with every client or patient. We can work on that. So first the assessment. How does it look like in your life before the quarantine? How does it look like now? And what are your goals in these 4 aspects? I will later get back to that. Okay. And as mentioned, the change of perspective changes our self-esteem. So with this balanced model, suddenly the patient sees, I still can do a lot in my life. It has changed, but nevertheless, I can do things, and I can get self-esteem from the things I'm doing. So I'm not only sitting on the couch, but I can really do something. So one of the other things mental health worker can do is to set goals for all 4 areas of life and to start now to help the patient to develop some previous neglected areas. For example, in European countries, they have started now with, I don't know, some internet sports training tools. Some people sit down and read more, learn something, you know, there are some, I don't know. A major issue now we have like in Germany and so is that for many fathers, it's now a huge challenge to deal with their children. Yeah, for example, we just had a father came and said, oh, I didn't know that the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder of my child was so severe, because he never saw the child. Now he sees, oh, to be 8 hours, 10 hours with a child, it's very complicated. And as some people say, if you get out of this lockdown without a new skill, without more knowledge, without better health, you never lack time, but you lack discipline. I think that's also something, depending on the situation, you have to confront the client and the patient sometimes that it really, you are in control of your own life. It's not the virus, you are in control. I think this is something we have to help them. What can I do? We have here some clients now, you know, in Germany since last week, it's now opening up a little bit. We're in the 2nd phase now. Nobody knows how it will happen. Now some people after 7 weeks are getting out from the home. Some have used this time very effectively for themselves, for their families and so on. And some haven't done anything. They say themselves, I've wasted the last 7 weeks. I was only concerned what will happen. This blocked me totally. I didn't do anything, just sitting and this. I think that's something very important. Maybe just as a small thing, if you allow, maybe you've heard in the internet that they say that Isaac Newton and William Shakespeare, when they were in quarantine 400 years ago, I don't know if you know that they developed a lot. Isaac Newton, he conceived the law of universal gravitation during this quarantine, and Shakespeare wrote some of his major tragic plays, King Lear, Macbeth, Antony and Cleopatra, during the quarantine. So a quarantine can also be a very productive situation, depending, of course, how your life situation is. No question about that. The other thing what I want to say is, just what I say, to be more proactive versus reactive. In Germany, this is from today, statistic from today. They made a statistic, the man said, before the pandemic, my job was the most stressful factor in life. Now for 42%, they say the education and care of my children. The woman saying no change. Already before the pandemic, 50% were stressed because of the children and 30% because of the job. But for many men, at least here in these areas where they can work from home with the computer and so on, now they have the children the whole time around. It's become a very, very stressful situation, and which again has a potential also to develop some new skills. At the same time, it has the potential for child abuse and so on, violation. Yeah. As you know, one of the major things I think we have to teach our patients is the difference between being reactive or proactive. Now, many people have the feeling I'm reactive. There is the virus, the government decides, and I react to that. So I am not in control of my life. And many of us spend all the time in order to be in control of their own life, and now they lose that actually then. So how can they be more proactive? And that's what I explained with the balance model, with the vision, so I can be proactive and not affected so much by that. Here's a nice model that says, I can control the following things, and what are the things I cannot control, so let them go. I don't know, what are other people doing, how is the government doing, and so on then. And I can control my own attitude, turning off the news, and so on and so on. Then my how do I follow recommendations, so on then. I think that's something very important. We have to help the patients to understand in which areas he is in control in life, in which areas not. Again, dear colleagues, to make it clear, this pandemic is not the worst thing which have hit the world. It's also not the only one. I mean, in each country are hundreds of other problems existing at the same time. I think only the global dimension makes it so important, and that it came so quickly. But there are many other issues in each country where we have to apply the same things to that. Just a small example, because you said, Mr. Sauer, said briefly say how it's, for example, in Germany. Just to give you an example, in Germany, 2 weeks ago came a law that we have to wear face masks also in the medical and psychotherapeutic offices. Medical was clear, but psychotherapy was new. And among many psychotherapists, it caused so much stress. They were writing hundreds of emails and this and that. Why? Because they got very excited immediately. 1 or 2 weeks later, it was clarified that the patient therapists can decide themselves if for a successful session the mask can be taken away or not. So usually now in the session we have no mask. Outside in the waiting room we are wearing a mask then, yeah? But what I want to say as an example, I found it very important that we get how do you say, more a balanced approach to bring the people down. Even our own colleagues are sometimes so excited, so focused on this pure physical aspect of this disease. We have to get them a little bit down. So that's what I'm doing now the last 2 months in our large academy. We write every 2 or 3 weeks, but only every 2 or 3 weeks, a round email to everybody, to the trainers, to the students, and so on. But we try to bring them down, focus them a little bit. I think that's very important because many people cause much more stress than is necessary. I think that's also very important to bring the people down, and I think that's also one of our tasks. Something we have discussed with some clients, I don't know if you want to find this useful or not with the patients, write down your pandemic insights. You know, sometimes we do this in psychotherapy, we say write a letter to yourself and maybe next day you will open what has happened and this and that. Because now many people say, oh, when it's over, I will do this, I will do this, I will do that. And then I say, please write this down in a letter, envelope, close the envelope, and after the pandemic, we will look at that. Because I'm afraid that many people after the pandemic will go back again to the old behavior and nothing will change. So the whole suffering was useless. Yeah? Or can I really write down some insights now and I later then can put it into practice? One thing which we have found very, very, and you can read in many things is if you are in a more quarantine mood, situation of lockdown, how to bring a daily structure, routine, discipline, plan, and rhythm. I mean, this is just a very small thing they have done in America for toddlers or for little children, that even then you have a small schedule with them what to do. Because it's Sunday or every day is Monday, so there is no schedule. You wear always the pajama 24 hours, you don't go out, there is no schedule, no thing. And some of this youth, especially after 7 weeks on the mobile phone and internet, they are coming out like zombies. God knows when next week the school will open here, what they will do. So I think that's very important to get a daily schedule, and I think this is our task, to speak with the parents, to speak with the people, get dressed in the morning, brush your teeth. So really very practical things to continue with your normal life, even outside some things have changed. I think that's very important. If you allow just a few words about the special impact on children. We all know that, of course, children, every child varies. So for every child, it's this means something else, the pandemic. And that's also important to explain to the parents that children react different than adults. And many parents forget that. For example, one very important thing is to speak openly with the children in order to understand what is in their mind. Today was in a publication written that someone spoke with a 6-year-old child, and the child said, this is a deadly virus. And there was a suggestion of the therapist or psychologist, maybe we call it the bad virus, but not the deadly virus. You know, the child gets afraid of deadly virus. And we have to help the children to understand their own physical symptoms, you know, or we have to understand them, insomnia, eating pattern changes. So I think that's very important. And I'm afraid that many families don't speak about the pandemic at home. Yeah. Are they missing their friends or schoolmates? Some do, some not. We have a lot of youth here with like little bit like social anxiety, and so they feel great. They cancel their appointments they have because they say, I have no school, no homework, I sit at home and the whole day I can be at the computer. It's wonderful. And the parents say, okay, we don't have any problems anymore because there are no demands. And the other children who are dying, yeah, they need their friends, yeah, they are thirsty to meet them. What is the role model of the parents? We know this as mental health workers, but we have to explain them. Again, are the parents denying the whole thing? Are they complaining about the situation? Are they only in the internet? Is the isolation of the parents? And what are the themes, subjects they discuss at home during this pandemic? This all sounds like more psycho-educative things, but I think it's very important to help the parents really how to deal with that. Then, for example, how can the parents help the children to develop some and teach some skills and not entertaining them? I don't know how it's in your place, but here many people many parents get tired and exhausted because they want to entertain the children. What do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now? We play this and that. In the past, you try to teach the children life skills so the child would follow you. Now we have to follow the child and play the whole time. It's very stressful. And something maybe we can all discuss later is this, what in Western countries is now happening is the increasing of domestic violence, especially against women, especially against children. You know, usually, especially in Western countries, the teachers report signs of injury to the authorities. Now, because the children don't go to school, there is no one who can report this then. So children, if they're beaten up or so, nobody sees that. People don't go to doctors because they're afraid to get the virus in the hospital. And the teachers, they also don't play a role. So that's a major thing. We have to be aware of that. It's very complicated. And I'm afraid that this might increase in the future. In positive psychotherapy, we use a proverb where we say, if you want something you have never had, you have to do something you have never done before. So one opportunity of that is to go with the patient and client, what are your life and your goals maybe after the quarantine? What are the things you want to change? Again, in the 4 areas, what do you want to change once this is over for your area of body and health? What was your insight? What did you find out? What are your insights about your work? I know some people who are starting here to think, maybe I have to change my profession. I'm in a profession which is useless. Yeah. For example, we have here some people, let's say, who are professional sportsmen. It's nice, but they say they go now and work in a shop to help the people to pack their food because they say, then I do at least something then, yeah? We call it like the essential professions or not. Some people have to reconsider their relationships. How is my marriage? How is my family? did I pay enough time for my parents, for my children, and so on then? And what does it mean for my future? As a colleague said, there can be Corona 20, Corona 21, we don't know what will go. There will be other crises too. So what did I learn? How I have to change, readjust my life in the future before the next thing will happen. And now is the time to make the goals, because once the quarantine is over, everybody will be busy and doing something strange. So before getting to an end, I want to say a few words about this crisis and opportunity, as I mentioned already, but again, it depends on your life situation. If you're somewhere where you're just dying physically of the virus, you don't have time for that. But for other people, it's really the question, do I see this as an opportunity or will I go back to my past habits? As I said, how can I learn to accept things I cannot change? I think collectivistic cultures, people are much better in that. In dualistic cultures, they are very bad in this. What will I change in the 4 areas of the pandemic? What will be new priorities in life? What is really important for me? Which are open conflicts I have to solve, because I found out that, for example, in my marriage, in my work, there are problems I've never solved them. What did I find out about myself, my partner, my children, which I didn't know before? Am I satisfied with my job? Or as we say now here in Germany, do I have the right partner for quarantine? For young people, it's a good opportunity to see, can I stick with this person 2 months in a home? Do we have so much to speak with my potential partner or not? So to summarize up, humanity will collectively weather this pandemic storm. But in the interim, we must all do what we can do to manage the emotional health and well-being. And a virus can invade our bodies, but we get to decide whether we let it invade in our minds. And I think that's where our task comes. And friends, at the end, dear colleagues, I would like to show this one slide, which says, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? I think even the time is quite complex now, but I think we as mental health workers have a unique opportunity to do something now, that our voices become louder, that we have to bring the awareness of the mental health, and not only of severe mental health, of normal, of the emotional mental health. We have to bring it to our governments, to the news, in talk shows, and so on and so on. And not to leave the field only to politicians. They cannot do everything. It is our task, I think, to do something. And at the end, I think it's very important to encourage all the people to seek help, depending on how the situation, of course, is also in your country. But some people are very ashamed. You know, this is in all cultures like that. But to encourage them, if necessary, see a psychiatrist, psychotherapy, psychologist, counselor. Maybe, I don't know, if there's self-help books, join groups, there are internet hotlines, online tools. So there are some ways to do something. There is no way to be ashamed of that, but we have to do something. So then, thank you very much for your patience for this part. And if you want some further information, these are some things we have here. And then, Mr. Solomon, if you agree, then maybe we can get to the discussion a little bit then, huh? To the discussion and here to some question and answers if you want. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamid. Everyone, if you have questions, like you can see your chat box. On the chat box, you can write like this. Let me know.
Mr. Solomon, we can open up and everybody who wants can speak now at the same time, or whatever you want. You decide then, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe those who are interested, like you can put this sign, like the happy sign. Question. Okay, Dr. Mulukan, go ahead. Okay.
Yes, I have a question. Yeah, the talk was very interesting, really thoughtful. So, what did you experience for those like healthcare providers? What kind of emotional issues?
Dr. Mulukan, we can't hear you. Everyone, is it clear?
No, it is not.
Dr. Mulukan, we can't hear your question.
Okay.
Now you can repeat.
Now?
Now it's better, yeah.
Now it's better. Now it's better. You can continue.
Now it's better, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, yeah, you can continue, Dr. Mulukan. Continue your question now.
All right. Dr. Hamid, it was a very interesting and thoughtful presentation. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very
Hear
much.
me now?
Yes, thank you very much.
So my question is, healthcare providers being a frontliners in this medical warfare against COVID-19, what kind of emotional issue you witness in this group of service providers, healthcare providers, while